Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today. Actor Shemar Moore expressed frustration about the cancellation of his television series SWAT. Now, Shemar Moore's SWAT is a rebooted version of the 1970s cop show SWAT and is a new version for the 21st century. However, after 7 seasons, CBS has decided to cancel SWAT and has decided to give the slot that SWAT had a brand new program. Now, the show SWAT did fairly well in the ratings, and Shemar Moore is upset because while he and the cast and crew of the show SWAT did everything that the network and the production company asked for, the show is still being canceled. Now, as someone who has studied the entertainment industry for over 25 years, I can tell you that you can basically do everything that the network wants, and you can go out here and do everything that is asked of you, and a network still will go out here and cancel your show, even if the ratings are good. And sometimes a network will cancel a show even if the ratings are good, if there are issues as related to the owners of the studio that the show is produced by, or if there is an issue as related to the production budget. Now, the big problem with SWAT is that SWAT is produced by Sony, and with SWAT being produced by Sony, CBS has to go out here and buy this show, and CBS no longer wants to buy SWAT because SWAT's production costs are just too high for them. Now, what's happening with SWAT is the same thing that happened with the A-Team, according to some reports, in 1986, because back in 1986, they were still producing the A-Team, which was considered to be extremely popular at the time. However, with a ratings drop, the show's production costs were just too high for NBC to keep that show on the air. And with the resurgence of sitcoms thanks to The Cosby Show, NBC wanted to go out here and put content on in that hour-long time slot that they could go out here and get more ad revenue for than what they would if they were to continue producing the A-Team, which was already having an increasing production budget in proportion to the cost of the show. And the same thing that happened to the A-Team is happening to the SWAT right now. While SWAT is still popular with the shrinking audiences on broadcast television, what's happening is that the show that's 7 years old cannot continue going on because the production cost of the show and the fees for the show don't remain flat any longer. Now, back when Sony put this show on the air, they were paying a flat fee to CBS. However, the production costs of the show have increased over the last 7 years, and as the production costs of the show have increased, the fee that they want to charge for the show, Sony wants to raise the price on the fee, but CBS doesn't want to pay that fee. And because CBS doesn't want to pay that fee to Sony and have to continue paying increasing production costs, it is cheaper for them to cancel the production rather than continue on with a production that is 7 years old. And even though the ratings are starting to go back up, it's just the whole proportion of costs are too high to keep this show on the air. And that's the reason why SWAT is being canceled after 7 years, because it just costs too much to continue producing SWAT. And because it costs too much to continue producing SWAT, what CBS has decided to do is terminate their contract with Sony as related to buying the show, and that's the reason why the show is getting canceled. And this is why Shemar Moore is frustrated right now. Shemar Moore is frustrated because he's basically out of a job and there's nothing that he did wrong. His acting was perfectly fine on this show for 7 years. However, the studio just can't afford to keep this show on the air because it's not making enough money to cover the production costs and the fees paid to CBS by Sony. Sony just cannot afford to keep eating up costs on this show as related to keeping it on broadcast television because as the budget goes up, the ad rates would have to go up and advertisers would basically balk at continuing to pay high prices for a show that is in the middle of the ratings. Now, if this was a top tier show like Abbott Elementary is right now, or The Cosby Show was in the past, the network possibly would absorb the cost for another season. But with this show basically being a depreciating asset for CBS, they just decided to end the show. And again, 7 years is considered to be on the older side of the spectrum as related to television shows. When a TV show is 7 years old, that's basically when the network wants to put it out to pasture. Back in the days of the 80s and the 90s and the 70s, that's when a network would be looking to put a show out to pasture and be getting ready to plan the series finale. That's usually what the plan is for a show that is 7 years old. But in these days, I guess guys like Shemar Moore are used to the long extended runs of TV shows like his previous show, Criminal Minds, which I believe went about 10 to about 13 years. And with that show going as long as it did, Shemar Moore probably thought that there was more gas in the tank for SWAT, which usually got a renewal every season. Unfortunately, Shemar Moore doesn't understand how TV works. And again, when you have a show that goes 7 seasons, that's when executives basically want to clear the schedule of these aging, depreciating shows before these shows wind up losing their audience value and cannot be resold to syndication like it was in the 80s and the 90s, or be put on streaming, because if a show stays on the air too long, the audience stops caring about that show. And when the audience stops caring about that show, what they do is look to go out and stop watching it, even if it goes to secondary and tertiary markets like syndication, streaming, or home video. If a show has too many seasons, the audience walks away from that show and no longer cares about that show. But with the SWAT show having a fairly decent following, the CBS and Sony basically want to end the show right here. And they want to end the show right here while it has strong momentum, because they want to preserve their profitability on secondary and tertiary markets like DVD and like home video and streaming. And they want to be able to sell this show, and they don't want to wind up losing value on the show. And that's why the Sony and CBS are cutting the show, because they don't want to lose value by leaving a show too long on the air, because you start taking losses as the ratings do start to decline. And even though SWAT was in the middle of a ratings resurgence, they just don't want to lose that long-term value as related to the show. So I understand all the business reasons why CBS and Sony are deciding to end their business partnership on SWAT, but sadly Shemar Moore is an actor caught in the middle of this whole situation. And as an actor caught in the middle of this situation, this is a bad place for him to be at 52 years old. At 52, there's not much leading man work for a brother out here as related to roles that are as good as the Hondo role he played on SWAT. And there are not many good projects out there that are clearly written for black men like the role that he had on SWAT was. So I understand Shemar Moore's frustration, because it's going to be very hard to find a role that was of quality like this one and find a TV series, because TV series work, when you get it, you gotta appreciate it, because TV series work don't come along that often. And when you get a good TV series that can go for years on end, you need to save that money up, because you may be in for a long period out of work. I mean, getting a role like this, again, once you get a TV series, you have to cherish that role and save that money, because it could be a long time for a guy like Shemar Moore to get another role, because at 52 years old, he's in a place where they are, again, 52-year-old men, they don't get many leading man roles, especially for black men. So I understand Shemar Moore's frustration, because he, again, as an actor, did his part, but this is just how the business rolls as related to TV shows. And any seasoned person who knows the business understands they need to start saving their money from season 1, because there may not be a chance that this show goes past season 1. And as you're going into different seasons, you thank God that your show is continuing to stay, but you understand that this show is eventually going to end. And most seasoned actors and people who are seasoned in the business, we know that this show at the 5-year mark, that's when you need to start making plans to find some other work elsewhere, because are usually around the season 5 part, that's when the network starts thinking about pulling the show or moving the slot, and that's when you need to start thinking about making your plans during your hiatus to go work on some movies, some indie movies, or some other projects, and make sure that you work on those projects and get that work secured, because this show may not be on the air much longer. So most people in the business understand season 5, yeah, I need to start making plans for the future. And you can't get frustrated about the network doing what it does, because networks, again, oftentimes will kill shows, and they'll kill shows even if they're doing well, because it's just not making any money for them. Now, the fate of SWAT could have been saved if Sony had a streaming service. If it had a streaming service, it could possibly move the show the way Magnum PI moved from CBS over to an NBC and Peacock, but there's no streaming for Sony. And again, I'm really sad for Shemar Moore, who just had his first child, and now he's looking for a way to pay for his first child's Pampers and other things, because his steady work on SWAT basically ended abruptly. And it possibly would have ended abruptly anyway, because in addition to the Sony issue with the writer's strike going on, because if the writers are able to negotiate a better deal, this show would have basically cost the network too much. And with it costing the network too much, they possibly would have killed SWAT either which way, because that's what happens with aging shows. The network wants to kill aging shows, because aging shows have high production costs, high actor salaries, and those costs basically encroach in on revenue. And as those costs encroach in on revenue, they are no longer an asset to a network. So what happened here was just business in Hollywood. And sadly, Shemar Moore, while he's frustrated, he doesn't really understand the business of television as related to cash flow. And he doesn't understand that at the end of the day, this is business. It's not personal. You can do everything that, again, a studio and a network tell you to do, but if they can't pull a profit as related to that show is going off the schedule and going off the air. Now, if you want to read my screenplay book all about Marilyn and learn about the struggles of a black actress in Hollywood, you can pick up that book on Amazon.com, along with its companion book about the TV series Marilyn Marie starred in, all about Nikki's fabulous first season. And if you want to pick up other books in the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com as well, in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can send a donation to the PayPal, the Patreon, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, All About Nikki, A Fabulous First Season. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless in this absolutely fabulous African-American 1990s teen sitcom. Get all 13 episodes of All About Nikki, The Fabulous First Season in paperback and e-readers today. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes 1987 at online booksellers everywhere.